The house on 13th Street carried the warm scent of cinnamon glazed ham and pine, a fragrance that once signaled joy. I stepped through the front door, clutching a small box wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. Laughter and chatter spilled from the dining room, bright and overlapping. The sound of a gathering where every seat was spoken for. I paused at the threshold. The table gleamed under crystal glasses, tapered candles, and name cards inked in Bryn's precise cursive. I scanned them twice, my heart sinking. My name was absent. At the table's head sat my son, Coulter, his posture firm, his expression echoing his late father, Graham. He sliced into the ham with an air of authority, as if the room belonged to him. When I drew a breath, he didn't look up. "Your plate's outside with the dogs," he said, his voice flat, not loud enough to pass as humor. The room stilled, forks pausing, but no one spoke. Bryn, seated across from him, smoothed the pale green silk scarf around her neck, one that once hung in my closet. She sipped her wine, her gaze sliding past me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in. Heat rose in my cheeks, but I kept my voice even. I stepped forward, placed the box at the table's center, and leaned close to Coulter. His eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the boy who once wept when I fell on the ice. But that boy was gone. "Check under your plate," I whispered. His smirk wavered, uncertain. I didn't wait for a reaction. I straightened, turned, and walked back down the hall, the laughter behind me muted by my silence. Outside, the December air bit at my skin, my breath clouding as I crossed the walk. Hyde Park's restaurant lights glowed 2 blocks away, warming the night. I gripped my keys and stepped into the dark, knowing the box held more than paper and twine. The next morning, I walked the Boise River greenbelt. Frost still clinging to the grass, geese glided across the water, their wings a steady pulse against the quiet. The cold seeped into my lungs, sharp and cleansing. My mind drifted to Christmases past, when the house held us together. The tree was always lopsided, braced with bricks, its ornaments a mismatched collection. Graham would hold up the cracked glass reindeer, his half-smile disarming our debates. "Peace doesn't pick sides," he'd say, hanging it to settle the room. I remembered the winter. I slipped near Camel's Back Park, splitting my lip on the ice. Coulter, then small and frantic, cried harder than I did, shouting for Graham until he carried me inside. My son swore I'd never die, wrapping a blanket around me like a sentinel. That tenderness was real once. Now, it clashed with last night's scene, the curated table, Bryn's scarf claiming my past, the silence that let cruelty settle unchallenged. Love had hardened into ritual, warmth into performance. I buried my hands in my coat pockets, thinking of the holly leaf mug Graham gave me, chipped but mine. Last year, my stocking vanished from the mantel, an oversight I'd dismissed, though I knew better. The geese rose, veering south, and I walked on, realizing my erasure from that house began long before the missing chair. Over months, the home I'd helped build became unrecognizable. Family photos once lined the hallway, Graham and me at Payette Lake, laughing, but now, a glossy print of Coulter and Bryn with mums at a State Street Garden Center hung in their place, as if they'd rewritten the season. On social media, I saw their impromptu family dinner, the table perfect, candles lit, my absence unremarked. When I called to check on my mother, Bryn answered, her voice bright in my kitchen, stirring coffee in Graham's cardinal print mug. "Your mom's elbow deep in pie," she said, laughing as if I were a distant acquaintance. Each visit revealed more. Medication schedules changed. Finances shifted. Explanations given only after decisions were made. It's easier through Coulter, my mother once said, her tone soothing but dismissive. So, I began my own quiet work. Unseen, I photographed walls, closets, drawers, inventory by memory. A record no one could erase. One afternoon, while the house bustled, I slipped the holly leaf mug into my coat, its chipped rim pressed against my finger as I placed it in my apartment's cupboard. Proof something of mine endured. After Graham's memorial, the Harrison Boulevard house brimmed with neighbors and cousins bearing. The winter air was sharp, but inside, the rooms glowed. Bryn stood at the door in my black dress, bought years ago for my uncle's funeral. She greeted guests with a practiced smile, her hand grazing their arms as if she'd always belonged. I lingered by the coat rack, listening as she poured cider and shared stories of Graham, his early mornings, his steady habits, as if she'd been there for every moment. No one questioned her polished anecdotes. Easier than the messy truth of Hood truly stood by him. Coulter moved through the room, orchestrating introductions. Speaking of managing doctor visits and bank accounts, he believed he'd carried the load alone, control equating to care in his mind. I could have corrected him, reclaimed my place. But I stayed silent, my hands clasped. That night, alone in my apartment, I listed the changes in a notebook: the missing quilt, Graham's tool belt gone, Bryn's ease in my dress. These weren't accidents, they were deliberate edits. One afternoon, when Coulter was at work and Bryn elsewhere, I returned to the house. The rooms felt staged, stripped of soul, but the study remained untouched, smelling of motor oil and dust. Graham's recliner sagged, the clock ticked 10 minutes slow. A memory surfaced in high school. Graham hid a key in his worn copy of Travels with Charlie, saying, "Just in case." I pulled the book from the shelf, shook it, and the key fell into my palm. It fit the dark wood cabinet's lock. Inside a metal safe lay an envelope. I opened it on the desk, revealing a notarized will. Graham's signature, clear, witnessed, and stamped. It left everything: the house, savings, a land parcel to me. With no mention of Coulter or Bryn, a note followed in his blocky script: "Ione, I see it now. You stayed when others spoke over you. I'm sorry I let that happen. This house is yours. You've earned it. Love, Dad." My hands shook as I scanned the pages to my phone, storing them in a folder labeled Records. I returned the originals, keeping the key. At my Vista Avenue apartment, snow flurries drifted past the window. I set the holly leaf mug on the counter and searched Idaho probate basics. The process was straightforward. A self-proving will, like Graham's, could be filed without hearings in Ada County. I contacted Nia Culver, an attorney recommended by a neighbor. Her voice was calm, practical. "The will's valid," she said. "File after the holidays, less noise." We scheduled for January. I began a folder: copies of the will, photos of missing items, dates of unanswered calls, bank statements. Each entry was clean, like balancing accounts. I wasn't seeking revenge, just order. On Christmas Eve, the house glowed with uneven lights. I carried another brown paper box up the steps and entered without knocking. The dining room was a tableau of formality: candles, matched glasses, name cards. No place for me. Coulter glanced up briefly, then resumed carving. Bryn avoided my eyes. I set the box among the platters and leaned toward Coulter. "Check under your plate," I said, my voice low. His brow furrowed, but I turned and left, my boots steady on the wood. Inside the box was a notarized copy of the will, Graham's letter, and a photo of us at Bogus Basin, smiling in the snow. Taped under Coulter's plate was the safe key, proof his authority was borrowed. As voices rose behind me, I stepped into the night. St. John's bells ringing clear. Messages flooded in after Christmas Bryn's light excuses. Coulter's plea to fix this without mentioning the will. Relatives urging forgiveness. I let them fall into silence. Writing in my journal, I don't need apologies that demand my labor. Coulter appeared at my workplace, but I avoided him. His rattled presence wasn't about losing the house, it was losing the role he'd claimed. In January, I walked into the Ada County Courthouse, the folder under my arm. Nia guided me through the forms, naming me personal representative. Notices would go to Coulter and Bryn. Keep it routine, she advised. You hold the authority. The filing felt like balance restored by February. The Boise River's ice began to crack. A neighbor sent a photo. Graham and me at the tool bench. Now thumbtacked in the shed. Coulter texted, "I'll cooperate." No apology. Just acknowledgement. Bryn stayed silent. I sipped coffee from the holly leaf mug. It's chip sharper now. I penciled inventory dates, contacted contractors, and drafted a transition plan. Not punitive. There was no triumph, only clarity. Graham's gift wasn't just the house. It was the certainty that quiet truth endures. The river flowed freely. And so did I. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comment section. Your voice matters.